As a presenter, you're going to get questions from the audience, and the audience can enter their questions using the Q&A widget on the audience console. So they'll be typing in their questions in a text format. Whenever those questions come in, right above this Q&A tool down on the bottom of the console down here, you will get an alert. It will have a red bubble that pops up with an exclamation mark on there that shows you that, hey, there are questions coming in from the audience. Now, that doesn't mean you have to address them if you don't want to. You may have a formal Q&A session or a slide that designates the point in the presentation when you actually want to address questions. But you can totally have someone in the Q&A tool at all times helping to manage questions. Now, I went in ahead of our call and put in some questions because that is actually one of our best practices and a feature of the Q&A tool. And then this looks a little more realistic, having some questions in here. But this is a lot like an email inbox. You can see it says inbox right here, so it's an inbox folder right here. But the way I put these questions in, and we call them seed questions, is all I did was I clicked on the Add Questions Plus button right here, and I typed in my question, and I saved it to my inbox. Like I said, this is one of our best practices because as a presentation team, you'll probably want to go through your presentation and add some questions into the Q&A tool just so that you have something ready to go whenever you start a Q&A session with your audience. Sometimes questions are slow to start or to come in, or people aren't sure what they're really asking, and you want to have something that you can discuss with your audience while those questions are coming in. This gives the audience time to think through what they want to say or ask and type that in and submit that. So having some questions that you would absolutely love for your audience to ask, but you're not guaranteed they're going to ask those questions about your content, this is a great way to do that. The other benefit of this is knowing that the questions are always anonymous on the audience side. You will always see the question and the answer when you respond to them, either in text or, of course, verbally. But unless you just say, we have a great question from Sam at ON24, unless you just call them out by name verbally, then nobody will ever know on the audience side that the questions that you added in as seed questions weren't questions that another attendee didn't ask. So it's a great way to get this started and a great way to have something in your back pocket ready to go. So I just put in some basic questions that you might encounter in a typical session. So some of these would be things that maybe your Q&A person could take care of, like, is there a number I need to dial in to participate? Well, on the ON24 platform, we stream the audio to your computer speakers, and we stream the actual presentation to your computer screen. So this one person is probably only needs to be dealt with on a one-to-one basis. So with this question, I can make that a low priority question, which takes that question and moves it to the bottom of the list. So as questions are coming in throughout the course of the presentation, your Q&A manager can move them into the order they need to be. So the most important questions or the most important clients can be addressed, and they can be set as high priority questions, like when will you host your next webinar? That would probably be a high priority question because that's something you're going to want to address. You can order these things in a different priority. So if you look at this, this shows you how to prioritize your questions just by using high, medium, and low. All questions come in as a medium priority, and then you decide whether they're a high or a low, and then the medium ones will stay in the middle. So will you ever host a webinar series? Maybe that's something you're thinking about but not ready to address yet, so then maybe that's a medium priority. How do you control the audio levels? You can move that down to the bottom. That would be a low-level question that your Q&A person can address and just send that out locally to the one person there. Will you ever host a webinar series? Who should I contact about? Maybe that's a high priority question. So we can click on that, bump that to the top, and you can see how prioritizing can be really beneficial to making your Q&A powerful, because the most important questions get addressed during the session, and you can follow up with any questions that were low priority, and an email follow-up. All of that will be available in your reporting features. Like I said, some of these questions like how to control the audio levels, or is there a number I need to dial into to participate, your Q&A manager can actually deal with these on a one-to-one basis, because these tools up here and these buttons allow us to address our audience in different ways. So maybe this is just a one-off question from one person that needs to understand that ON24 is different the way we actually interact with this webcast is just to watch it and listen to it through our computer. We don't have to dial in like we do in most other webcasts or through other consoles or platforms that are out there. So they could just type in a simple answer and say, no, the presentation will be streamed. And we can correct those things to your computer speakers. Let's change that and make that right. So we would look over this and make sure that we have everything there. It's professional. And once you have your answer typed, then if you just want to send that to the one person that asked the question, you'll have their name in this first column, have their company in the second column, which is not populated here since all these are seed questions. But you can click just send, and it will just send the question and the answer just to the one person that asked the question. It won't show to anybody else in the presentation unless you choose to send to all. Now the send to all button would take a question. If you get a lot of questions about, do I need to dial in to participate in this webcast, then maybe that's a question, if you're getting multiple questions in there, that you need just to send that out to everyone. You can choose anybody who asks a question and use their question and then send to all by clicking this button. Everyone that's attending your webinar will actually get that to populate within the Q&A tool on their audience console. So send to all would inform everyone. They would just get a copy of the question and a copy of the answer, but not who actually asked the initial question. We leave the names off there. They just get the question and the answer. And then you can see in the reporting features, it will show who answered the question at what time. All of that's in the reporting features on the ON24 platform. Things you can look at after the event is over, and you can get in manageable reports to the reporting. So that's available as well. If there's a question that's really important, like who should I contact about, and it could be about something really important, and you want to take time to really address this verbally on the webcast, then you have the ability to push just the question to the slide view window, which is this window right here, the live view window on the presentation side. So if I take this question and I say push it to the slide view window, it's going to ask me, am I sure? Do I want to push this to the slide area? And I say yes. It just interrupts my presentation temporarily. Leaves me exactly where I am. It doesn't move me back to the beginning or anything, but it should push that question to the slide view window. And we're having some travel time issues here as far as getting that to push to the slide view window. And I don't know why that's not demonstrating the way it should, but that should pop up there in a white screen with just the question at the top. So that would allow you just to address the question and then mark it as answered with the checkbox. So anything you want to address verbally, text, of course, so you won't have a text copy of this, but you do have the archived on-demand version where you can go back and see how you answered any question that was actually pushed out to the audience. So anything that's there, you would have the ability to push that out. It would show to the audience in the slide view window, and then you can mark it as answered right here as a presenter. Or another feature that you can use here is you can create folders for topics, or you can create folders by maybe presenter. So if you have folders right here, you could say maybe Charlie is a presenter, so we can create a folder for him. We can click the plus button. We can say Sally is a presenter, and then we can go back to our inbox. And then as your questions come in, like when you host your next webinar, well, maybe Sally is the person who's in charge of planning those things out. She's the person that can answer that question. Will you ever host a webinar series? Maybe that's something Charlie has on his plate, so you can put that in his email folder. How can I get a copy of today's presentation? Maybe Sally's best equipped to answer that question. Your Q&A manager can drag and drop those questions into these folders. Then when you get to the point in the presentation where you want to have a Q&A session, you can actually handle this by saying, Charlie, you kicked off our presentation today, so let's see what questions we have for you. You can teach your presenters to just click on their own individual folder. You can see that the unanswered questions are always in bold typeface, and so they can click on the question. They can answer it verbally. They can mark it as answered when they're done, and that will show that they answered it. And then you can move over and say, okay, Sally, you picked up our presentation for the second part, so let's see what kind of questions our audience have presented to you or have submitted to you. So Sally can click on her folder and she can click on these questions, answer those, mark them as answered, or she can type the answers in after they get done presenting. It's kind of up to you how you want to plan this out. You can totally do this by text and have people answer their questions after they get done presenting if there's multiple presenters, or if you have one, you can address these and just mark them as answered. You'll still have a record of every question that was submitted. If you ever take a question, say for instance that I take this one about dialing in and I move it to the trash, it doesn't delete it. You'll still have a record of it. We just move it into this folder. And it says 0 here because we don't have any unanswered questions in that folder. So that's why the 0 is there. But trash doesn't delete anything. It just gives you a place to take questions that you need to remove out of the display, helps you better manage the questions. You can also use the hide answered and hide and show answered link right here to get rid of questions that are answered so that only questions that you have not yet addressed will appear to the audience or appear to the presenters, and you can address them with the audience. So basically, the ability to show and hide this just allows you to clean this view up for the presenters or for whoever's managing Q&A. So you can get them back by clicking on Show. So this link will show you everything in the inbox or just the unanswered questions, anything that has a status of unanswered. So that is how you can use the Q&A tool to actually address questions during your webcast. Any questions about how to use this tool or all the different priorities?
No, I think that was a very good overview of how to work this tool. Thank you.
Okay.